Our next session, I'm so excited for this. This is going to be a panel of elected officials from local governments in BC. They're going to be discussing the challenges, successes, and opportunities for asset management that make a community successful. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce the members of our panel this morning. Our moderator for the session is going to be Christina Benti, the CEO of Strategic Leadership Solutions. Christina, where are you? There you are. Our panel members are going to be Christine Fraser, the mayor from Spalmcheen Township, Corey Ramsay, the councillor from City of Prince George, and the new president of UBCM, as well as Wayne Price, the mayor from the City of Cranbrook. Please welcome our panel.
Well, good morning, everyone. So this is the panel that you've all been waiting for. What is the biggest complaint that I always hear from when I'm talking to staff? It's like, how do we reach the decision makers? So this is your opportunity to hear from elected officials. How do we change the narrative? We talked a little bit about that yesterday in the workshop about Greenwood. So I am super excited to be hosting this panel. I am a recovered politician myself, and the reason I fell in love with asset management is that I had absolutely fantastic staff that really helped support me in my understanding of asset management. And so when I left office 11 years ago, I became a real advocate for asset management. And so I'm super excited to be hosting this panel today. I'm going to be asking the folks some questions, and when I told them about preparing, I said, you know what, everybody just wants to have an authentic conversation and hear from you. How do we really shift the tide and bring that level of understanding to our elected officials that's going to, like I said, shift that narrative that we're all looking for. If you are a local government that provides services, then it's a no-brainer that you got to look after the assets that provide the services, right? So I am absolutely thrilled with our panel this morning, and I'm going to start off by inviting you to introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, and what's your understanding of asset management when you started as an elected official. And I will start with Mayor Fraser. We'll start with you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mayor Christine Fraser. I've been on council for 17 years, 3 terms as a council member, and it's my 2nd term as mayor. So the township of Spalmcheen is a small community in the Okanagan. We have just over 5,000 people. Our slogan is small but mighty. So we have bought into asset management in a big way, in large part to our CAO, who is Doug Allen. But prior to Doug coming, we were asking lots of questions about, hey, why are we replacing this at this schedule? Does this need to be replaced? Questions like that. So my family and I have lived in Spalmcheen pretty much my whole life. I did do a stint working with politicians in Alberta in my 20s, and I've had my own business over the years doing multiple things. So that's my history, and I'm a little bit addicted to politics at this point, and making sure that we're looking after our community.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Councillor Ramsay, and who is also the current president of UBCM. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, and thank you all for having me here today. It's a pleasure to join you. My name's Corey Ramsay. I'm a councillor with the City of Prince George, and this is my 2nd term. What did I know about asset management when I started in politics? Nothing. Nothing. I knew zip. As a newly elected, as a really young person, if I get elected to the next one, I'll have been elected 3 times before I even turn 40. That's a huge thing. So, what does a 20 and 30-year-old know about asset management? 3 months into my first term, I'm looking at a massive capital plan, and I have no idea about it at all, nothing. There were only 2 new counselors that term, so we didn't really get a big fulsome orientation. And I spent hours and hours, I probably spent 30 hours reading through line by line. And, we used to go through budget in one day, and it was a little bit performative for me, and I thought, we have to slow this down. And so now, I don't know if anyone's seen the gauntlet of the City of Prince George budget. It is 2 10 to 18-hour days of us going through line by line while I sit there and ask all the questions. And so, I think one of the things that I learned really early on was that sometimes you really have to take the time, and when there's none, because you're spread so thin, to really go through things. And I'm grateful to our staff for saying, when I asked the question, can we do this slower? Can we spend a bit more time going through it? Our meetings are televised, the public watches it at any given time. There's 1,000 people watching online. Let's take the time to go through it, because it's not just about me learning, it's about the public learning as well. So it was a really good opportunity to kind of break it down and go a little bit slower.
Thank you for that. That's the break it down, go a little bit slower. It can be, it actually takes a lot of courage to say that. Hey, can we slow down? I don't get it. I need help, right? And lots of elected officials, they don't want to say that. So thank you. That's gold right there. All right. Next up, we have Mayor Price.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Wayne Price. I'm the mayor of the City of Cranbrook. I'm in my first term as mayor. I served 1 term as a councillor prior to that. Prior to that, I was a director of fire and emergency service with the City of Cranbrook for 13 years. And prior to that, I was 15 years with the province of British Columbia with the Office of the Fire Commissioner. So I had experience working with different fire departments and local governments throughout the province. I guess the introduction to asset management, I got back to Cranbrook in 2005. We had a very forward-thinking CAO at the time who was listening to what Ottawa had to say as far as funding, and our staff had direction to start production of an asset management plan. That was in 2006, and just to develop the plan was extremely slow. We probably didn't even get off the ground, I would say, till about 3 years later. Basically, it was left to our engineer, and he had to do that off the corner of his desk. And it was really unfair when you think back, but nobody understood the scope of this, in those days, and really what was required. So there was a lot of failure there at the start. It wasn't until we had a new engineer come on board. He got the same direction. After about 6 months, he came back and says, "You're setting me up to fail. I can't do this off the corner of my desk. I need a consultant, or we need help." And it was that easy. For some reason, the previous people were reluctant to come and ask, for that type of help, outside help. Long story short, we had a consulting firm come in that helped develop the plan. And so the development was in place to a point, and implementation, and we stalled again. We stalled again probably for a couple of years, again, off the corner of our engineer's desk. It wasn't until about 2012 when we hired an extremely bright, energetic engineer in Mike Matika. Mike took it on. Unfortunately, Mike did it off the corner of his desk, and he's done an unbelievable job. We're really, really fortunate to have the staff we have. So Mike and the 2 Curtises that we had at the time, they were all in. They saw the value of it, and there was a lot of obstacles with council. I think in those days it was 2%, 1.5%. They would set budgets prior to sitting down and discussing budgets. They'd set a number. we're gonna hold the tax increase to 2% this year. I don't understand the rationale. I was sitting there, I was a department head at the time, and I'm going, you know what? My costs in fire have gone up 6% this year. You know, really, I mean, just look at collective agreements and things like that. Anyways, Mike and the two Curtises, and I'll tell you this right now, are absolute superstars. They have taken us beyond what I certainly would have expected where we are today. I think the city of Cranbrook's in a very, very good place, certainly with our asset management program. We've got a lot of infrastructure that's, 100 years old that's still in the ground, or 80 years old. We have a very limited tax base. We have no industrial tax base. We have a residential commercial tax base. So certainly, that's a factor for us. They have to be very strategic, and they have been what they bring to council. And that's where I think it's really important. This is the first council that I've seen that actually understands what asset management is and the value to doing budget.
Awesome. Did you hear that? One day you too could be called a superstar by your elected officials. Don't miss that. All right. So my first question, and I'm going to ask the questions, and I will call on two of you to answer the question, and then if the third person has anything to add, please jump in. So my first question is kind of a yes or no question, and then I'll add the rest of the question. So from your perspective, do elected officials fully understand their roles and responsibilities when it comes to asset management and sustainable service delivery? And then how do you personally make sense of your role in stewarding 100-year-old assets within a 4-year political term? So I am going to start with Mayor Fraser.
Thank you, Christina. I think it depends on your community. It depends on your staff and what they've taught you so far. So if you have Doug Allen as your CAO, past president of Asset Management BC, you're going to have a really good, a lot of information on what asset management is, a really clear explanation that's really clear and easy for council to understand, because we've been told for years, from when I started 17 years ago, you're getting into the weeds if you're asking questions about why are we replacing this? How come this costs this? And you just need to follow the staff report. You just need to follow staff direction. That's why we get paid. That's why you get paid the big bucks. And that's great, but it's still our responsibility as elected officials to be representative of the community and make sure that money's being spent responsibly in the community. So it is important for us to understand, because we're the direct contact with the people in the community, and they've elected us to be responsible for the community. So I think over time, and so for our council, we've bought it. We're drinking the Kool-Aid. We think it's great. We understand asset management. We can clearly explain it to our residents. We do a lot of visuals for our residents. We show them the pipe that's failing in the ground. We show them, hey, this is the cost to replace the pipe in the ground. This is why over the next 20 or 25 years, we're going to be borrowing for this. And this is why it's important to be responsible with that, because otherwise, if you don't plan for those things, then you end up having to do emergency repairs that cost 3 times as much. So I think it just really depends on the community. And if you have staff that think that, hey, council just needs to be quiet and say yes to the staff report, that's the problem. That really needs to change. And if you have a good relationship with your council and all your staff, you'll have a really, it'll be much easier when the staff report says we need to increase things by 5 or 10% or 20 or 30%, because there's clear rationale behind it.
All right. Doug, why don't you give a wave? There's Doug. Woohoo! Awesome, thank you for that. Councillor Ramsey.
I'm maybe going to give all my colleagues across the province the benefit of the doubt and say yes. We know our role. 3 years into the term, either you've gone to a conference, you've met a friend from another local government, we should all know a little bit. There's a difference between knowing your role and putting it into practice. And when you have a horde of angry residents in front of you, it's really hard to remember those fundamentals when the tensions are escalating. And so I think, when we think about resources and support, I gotta put in a plug for Jan Enns over here, because I'm a communications practitioner. That's my background. I work for a financial institution, so all of the risk management stuff we talk about in asset management, that I know. The communication side, that's so important. I think one of the greatest things we can do when we're putting into practice those asset management discussions as electeds is to really feel informed. Get key messages from your communications team and give it to your electeds. Make sure that they have backgrounders and facts, and there's resources for them that if they're being asked about a big project that has a lot of public attention, maybe even criticism, that we are able to defend you in those decision makings, in the recommendations you're making. I have no issue supporting something that is a tough call to make. Has anybody heard about the $37 million renovation of the aquatic center in Prince George? People are losing their minds, but it's important. We have to maintain this asset for the next 50 years. So I'm putting my hand up to support that $37 million investment. I'm happy to defend that, but give me the resources and the support to do that.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think that's that's gold. Help your elected officials be on the offensive rather than the defensive. Yeah, thank you for that. Mayor Price, do you have anything you want to add?
All I would say is, to the question, do councillors understand their role? It does take time. Do they understand asset management? When they first come in, I'm going to say across the board what I've seen is no. They really don't. They need to be educated as far as their role. I don't believe a lot of them understand their role as council, that they're there for governance purposes. They get down to that operational level and start making those types of decisions. So, what we focused on is right off the start is role clarity. And, with an orientation, for a week-long orientation for the new councillors, and our staff are part of that. Part of that orientation is one day, all of our senior staff are attending, and they will all present. And that's an opportunity where Mike and his team get to discuss infrastructure, asset management, and some of the issues we have in town. So I think they understand it, but at the end of the day, 4 years later, they'll see that it wasn't clear to them. And, we're going to find out here very shortly in another year when we get a new bunch. And it's interesting because you will probably get about 50% of change in there. And this is the sad part for the people that are leading the different departments and bringing the city forward, is they've got to re-educate and retrain, basically the whole council.
Yeah, thank you for that. How many of you during the orientation process organized tours of the assets? Like tour the water treatment plant? Awesome. Well, more hands should be up. So next year when this question is asked, all the hands are going to go up, right? Yeah. So again, that visualization, right, is so powerful. All right, let's talk about partnership with staff. So, in the one employee model, the CAO plays a central role in framing information and guiding council's understanding of asset management and service delivery. And Mayor Fraser really spoke about that. What do you need most from your CAO and from staff more broadly to make confident, well-informed decisions? And then I'll add, how does the way that information is framed and communicated affect your ability to balance political, financial, and technical considerations? And I will start with Mayor Price. I'm going to start with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Certainly, in my time back with the cities, I've seen 7 different councils, worked with 7 different councils, and probably 10 plus CAOs. I think it's critical. The CAO plays a critical role with staff. He or she has to be a leader, has to gain the trust of staff, and then he plays that role between staff and council, bringing them together. I can tell you there was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, at my first term actually, when staff had no trust of council, and there were council members that did not trust staff, and they would, a couple of council members would say that publicly in a meeting, that I don't trust this information you're bringing me. So I think it's really important that the CAO works very, very close with staff. A good council needs good information. We need the good and the bad, so we need good, solid information. I've seen staff that were afraid to bring the bad, and sometimes afraid to bring the good forward, you know, fear to speak up. There are experts. That's the CAO's job, to try and bridge that. We're extremely lucky. We have our most recent CAO, Mark Virtual. Again, the guy is incredible. His priority when he came in was gaining the trust and respect of staff again. And with council, I can say, you know, I've always been able to judge the success of an organization on what type of culture they have. And if you don't have a positive culture and a closely knit working team, it's going to be a struggle. So I think that's key, you know, is the CAO plays that role. He's got to give staff the freedom to do their job, the confidence. They're the experts, and that's what council relies on.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. All right, Councillor Ramsay.
Yeah, I guess when we're thinking about partnerships with staff and how electeds feel more confident in decision making, staff are the experts, but when I'm making a decision, I also want to feel like a subject matter expert. I don't need to go very far down the rabbit hole, but I need to know like fundamentals, and the access to information is such a huge part of that. And I get calls from across the province from electeds saying, how did you get your staff to give you that information? Because I asked for it and they said no. And that is your worst nightmare because that means, if I'm getting calls from electeds saying I'm not able to get this information, that means that they're not trusting staff, and that's not a good position to be in. So sometimes you have to go down the rabbit hole a little bit so that we feel like we've got a firm grasp of something. That means that all of you should have had your hands up when Christina asked about the tours. That is the greatest opportunity to create buy-in with your key stakeholders, which is your counselors. If you're not doing tours, if you're not doing lunch and learns, if you're not, sending the key message, these are how you build us up as subject matter experts. And we don't need to be you, but we need to be strong enough in and knowledgeable in the information to be able to convey that to the residents who are paying the bill for things. And so really supporting us with information, even if it takes a little bit longer, I think is going to produce better outcomes, which is what we want for our communities. Yeah, I think that's really what I wanted to say about that. So.
Thank you. And both of you spoke about the intangibles. We talk a lot about the tangibles, but the intangibles about respect and trust and building relational currency so that information is well understood. And then including the courage to say, can we slow this down? I really like that grab onto that. Mayor Fraser, is there anything you want to add to that? You spoke a little bit about that in the last question, but I want to know if is there anything you wanted to add, especially around the framing of information, maybe?
Yeah, I think just that the public needs the information presented in a common sense, easy to understand way, and I think council is the same. So you have all different degrees of education on councils. You have people that have run on one platform, you have people that are there, longtime community members like myself, but you have to present the information in a way that they really clearly understand, so that when they go out to the community, when those elected officials go out and they're talking to the community members, because that's who's getting the phone calls. Most of the time, it's not senior staff getting phone calls from, in a smaller community anyway, and I'm sure it's completely different in a large community, but in a smaller community, they're reaching out to the elected officials. So we need to clearly understand it and have visuals that clearly explain it to them. Because if you can explain it in that way to residents from an elected official perspective, it makes it really easy for community buy-in. And so I think from a staff perspective, being really strong in that is crucial, and making sure there's all those, graphs and charts and open houses and that show all the information, so everybody feels like they're really a part of the community and a part of the decisions that are being made.
Excellent, thank you. So, and I'll start with you, Mayor Fraser, again on this next question. In what ways does asset management strengthen your ability to make sound, defensible decisions? And where do you still feel like less confident or more uncertain when you're weighing asset-related choices? Like, where's the sticky bits?
Yeah, so I'll say I'll just use roads as an example. So road infrastructure. Historically, we used to replace our roads. There would be a report would come to council, Schubert Road or this road is starting to fail. We need to do some maintenance work there. We're potentially going to apply for a grant here or there. Once you have an asset management plan with a really good asset management registry that shows, hey, these are all of our roads in the community. Here's the level they're at. Here's how long they've been in service. Here's the maintenance that's been done. Here's the quality of the road. It makes it really easy then in your 5-year plan and in longer term planning now we get reports that come to council, and it's okay, in our asset management plan, it shows these roads are at this level. And so these are the next ones on. These are the ones we're chip sealing. These are the ones we're paving. These are the roads that, because we in the township changed the standard of our roads to replace like with like, because from an asset management perspective, we couldn't afford to replace everything with what our bylaws said. We changed our bylaws. So having an asset management plan has really, really changed the way we've done business, and it's way more responsible. So having that in place has just made it's night and day difference. And I would say if there's a sticky point in there, it would be making sure that the information in your asset management plan is accurate, because it's great to have a schedule that says, hey, we're going to replace, this is the replacement plan for all these roads or for the water infrastructure, but that doesn't help you when you have 5 kilometers of pipe that's 70 years old that starts failing, repeatedly over the same year, and you now have to pivot and deal with that. So having a little bit more information on, hey, some of these historic systems, especially if they weren't maintained very well historically, which I think we can all say stuff from the 70s was probably, maybe didn't have quite as much care put around it, that information is really accurate. That would be the sticky point.
Yeah, thank you for that. So there's, the fact that you're leading a service level conversation. Like, can we continue to provide this level of service over the long term? Maybe there's some areas where we're going to reduce the level of service, but that's a great policy discussion to have with your elected officials. So thank you for that. Mayor Price.
Thank you. City of Cranbrook is probably known as the pothole capital of Canada. Yeah, and we're the only city in Canada with potholes, by the way. But certainly, council's confronted on a regular basis about the condition of our roads, and and it's interesting. They see the roads, they don't see anything. It's the stuff they don't see that the asset management plan is certainly going to be the benefit for. But a couple of benefits of the asset management plan, I guess, is having it in place is, to me, that's the elected officials out when you're confronted by the public or questioned on something. It's really easy. We can rationalize why this is being done and this is being done and why that's not being done. And we can also go to the plan and say, and I get it all the time, my road is way worse shape than that road over there, and you guys are doing that. Why? Well, there's some rationale behind that. It's not always the worst that's first, So we can go to the plan, we can talk with our engineering staff, say, where are we at? First thing they do, it's not the top of their head, they pull out the asset management plan and say, that road is scheduled for here this year based on our financial plan, and it's all about ability to pay and everything else. So to me, that's absolutely perfect. It's such a good tool for an elected official when dealing with the public. I think secondly, I really don't know how you can present a budget without utilizing an asset management plan. It's bizarre. Certainly our annual budget, 50% is probably operational, and of the capital projects, probably 90% are related to the asset management plan. Our infrastructure. So it's really, really easy to justify your decisions you're making if you follow the plan. I think the sticky point really is funding. From the smallest to the largest community in this room, there's not a chance any of us can take on our infrastructure needs without senior level support funding. Certainly what we're seeing is we're getting a fraction of the funding we used to get, especially over the last 10 years. You look at the provincial government, federal government right now, record deficits. So, and certainly our priorities have shifted, with what's happened in the U.S. So I don't expect there's going to be an increase in any of the support coming to municipalities in the near future. So I think that's the big challenge going forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm on the road right now, traveling around Alberta doing post-election work. And one of the communities that I was just in, they historically have given their community tax rebates. So we were talking about these tax rebates, and I turned to the staff. I said, are you replacing the assets at the rate that they're wearing out? And the staff were like, no, right away. And I looked at council and I said, did you hear that? Like, helping your elected officials connect the dots is so key. Thank you for that. Councillor Ramsay.
Yeah, I think the sticky point I would just maybe add is that sometimes information changes. And after you make a decision, some new information comes in that might produce a different result, and we don't know how to bring that to council. And that is a tough one because you want to come with solutions to problems, and that takes time. But time also costs us a lot of money. And so my personal preference is that if that happens, I don't want you to come with a solution. My preference is that you come early and often, and we're having that conversation so that I have the heads up and that I can ask questions and give you some sort of sense of where I'm leaning, where council's leaning, so that you don't end up going down a rabbit hole coming back 4 months later and some of the solutions that could have been on the table aren't even available. So I think, as staff, you really want to come, here's the perfect solution with a wrapped little bow, and, but sometimes it's just making sure council's informed, and that can be really difficult to come without the solution. So I think on those, that's a big sticking point sometimes, in that if information changes, it's okay to come without answers.
Oh, thank you for that. I think Wally used to always say, you don't have to have perfect data, right? And tell your elected officials, here's what we know and here's what we don't know. They'll get it. So thank you for that. Right, so barriers beyond funding. Talked a little bit about funding. So aside from funding, what are the biggest barriers that get in the way of embedding asset management thinking into the daily decision making? Are they political, cultural, structural, or something else entirely? And you've kind of touched on that, but I'm curious to know your thoughts. And maybe I'll start with Councillor Ramsay.
Maybe this is an unpopular opinion among my colleagues here, but sometimes I feel like the politicians are always in the way. And I say that that my mayor is an engineer, and so it's a very interesting experience because there's so many questions that get asked that I don't think of, and when you have a subject matter expert as your mayor who's asking, well, why didn't you do it this way? The public perception is that it's constantly undermining staff. So it's really, I'm in a tough position. I don't know that a lot of other councils are in that position, but it does feel sometimes like, okay, how do we make sure we're leading with our governance hat and not our operational hat? And it's really easy when you have actual subject matter experts on your council to try and pull back from going down the rabbit hole. And so that, I think, is really challenging personally. That's a big barrier for us in Prince George, I think. But I would say the other side of that is that your elected officials are the balance. And so I think staff's responsibility is to come and ask for the moon, the sun, the stars, and tell us what it's going to cost. And our job is to weigh what the taxpayer can manage and handle. And so don't limit yourself in presenting options. I had this situation happen just a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't our staff, it was the health authority. And they came and they said, here's 2 options, and here's 4 more, but those won't work. Well, tell me a little bit more about those other 4 options. So, I can't speak enough to this, is just make sure you're presenting everything fully and let your politicians be that balance in that decision-making on choosing what the best outcome is for the residents. And we do that by being informed by the information that you provide.
Thank you for that. I like that. The politicians are the barrier and the balance. So that's awesome. Mayor Price.
I think right off the top, probably adequate staffing. Certainly, most communities are growing in BC now. Pardon me. And, councils are reluctant to add staffing. They want to try and keep that tax rate low. And typically, you're going to see where they try to cut back or hold the line is on planning and engineering. Your asset management is all about your planning and engineering. If you're growing, they have to grow. I see now that engineering and planners are at a premium, so it's extremely competitive for local government. We don't pay sometimes what private sector pays. So, so when you do get the good people, the retention of good people, I think that's tough. So again, I will say, you really have to appreciate the good people you have, so they do stay, Mike. It is really important. We see it every day, even in the regional districts, sometimes pay more than municipalities do. And we'll see our staff, some good staff jump, purely with it's wages and a lesser workload lots of times, right? So our staff are overworked. There's absolutely no question about it. And I think certainly on the political side, as Councillor Ramsay had stated, is council can't go operational, and they tend to. And when they go operational, that you're setting yourself up for problems. So yeah, And that's the political side. Sometimes they want to demonstrate to the public that they're politicians. They take themselves too seriously sometimes. We really do. And, they just got to remember your role clarity. And, I think, honestly, it's almost monthly. It doesn't matter how long people have been in those roles. You got to remind them of role clarity and let those people do their job.
All right, you need to say that to a room of elected officials. And I'm sure you will. Good. Okay, so let's talk about systemic change. If you could change one thing within your organization, within the system, or within political culture that would most advance sustainable service delivery and asset management, what would it be? And I'll start with Mayor Fraser.
All right. I do want to say one quick thing about the last question, if I could. Just on a staff-to-staff level, from community to community, I think it's important that staff really support staff from their neighboring communities. Because if everybody has a different perspective on asset management, and there's buy-in over here, but there's not over here from staff to staff, that translates to your elected officials and becomes, hey, well, we don't do that in our community, but we do this over here. So I just think that's really important to remember, that everybody's kind of, on the same page, beating the same drum, saying, hey, we believe in this. This is really important to all of us, and this is why it should be important to you. So just to add that. Okay, the next, so spend money like it's your own. Spend money in your community like it's your own money. Like it's like you're on a fixed income. Like you have only a certain amount of dollars to spend, and you have to choose the best way to do that. And you have a roof to look after and gutters to look after and all these maintenance items that if you don't look after them properly, the house is going to fall down. And translate that into all of the assets in a community. And then try and be as responsible as you can with that. So I don't think I can make it any more simple than that. Then it's really, really, really important to just have that clear understanding to the public and to your staff and to elected officials that we are being really responsible with your money. And I think if you show that to the community, you get community buy-in. You're always going to have the one-offs that want to throw staff on a tangent, but if you can really show, hey, here's how we're being responsible with your money, it goes a long, long way and promotes lots of buy-in.
Yeah, thank you for that. You don't book a trip to Disneyland when the roof's caving in. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Councillor Ramsay.
Thanks. Just in terms of systemic change and culture shifts, I think it's really hard. I guess understand the framework I'm coming from before I say this is that, Prince George, when I was first elected, we had a massive sinkhole that had been there for a year in a major intersection. We had a bridge that we had inherited from the province with a culvert issue. And we had a underground parkade project that was $10 million over budget, where our city manager had used their delegated authority to approve it and then came to council afterwards. So that's the climate I walked into when I first got elected. And I think there is a culture of being really afraid to come forward to discuss mistakes, to discuss the ugliness, but we have to really sit in that, and it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. But I think we owe it to our residents to have those really tough conversations and walk through what went wrong. And in terms of systemic change, sometimes when you have that negative experience, dealing with that parkade issue, pretty much, I think everyone knows about it. If you don't, go look it up. It sucked. But I think sometimes when you have that negative experience, we become fearful about bringing forward certain options, certain recommendations for fear that there's going to be another mistake. It's not going to be an appetizing option to the public, so why would we even present it? And And so I think we have to still continue to lean into those things. We have to be really unafraid of making mistakes or the potential of making mistakes, because sometimes even the potential without there being a mistake there is limiting us from bringing things forward. And that's a tragedy. And sometimes a mistake in the past that happened because of an outcome, situations change, and that might not be the same thing that happens again in the future. So I am a fan of trial and error. You're not going to get every politician that says that because it costs money. But I think that we need to experiment with solutions and options and try things out. And not everyone's going to be in that framework. There's a different risk tolerance level for everyone. I'm young, I haven't lived very long, so I got to try things out. But I think that we just really shouldn't be afraid of those sorts of things to bring them forward. And if your council is with you, if you build that culture together, then you're in it together. You don't have anything to fear, because we've come on that journey, and it can be scary. I think anything like that can be, but I think it's just a better place to come from to move forward on this type of stuff. So.
Excellent, thank you. Mayor Price, is there anything you want to add about?
Yeah, I think certainly, I think we're in a good place, for the size of our community and for the resources and kind of revenues that we got. But I think we're going forward. I'd like to see us go into a long-term strategy, the 20-year plus. It was this council's focused to go from 5-year planning to 10-year planning for infrastructure in our term. I'm very optimistic we're going to be there by the end of the year. It's not formalized yet, but our finance and engineering and staff have been working on that. So they do have all the numbers and for the next 10 years. And then again, we need to go to the 20-year and then go beyond that. But again, everything takes time, and that's one thing with infrastructure. You took 100 years to get us to where we are in this condition, so we're certainly not going to fix it overnight.
Excellent, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about competing pressures. So elected officials today face complex pressures, from climate change and emergency management to social issues like homelessness and addiction. How do these competing responsibilities influence your ability to stay focused on core service delivery and long-term infrastructure stewardship? And then, how do you balance empathy for today's crisis with responsibility to future generations, that intergenerational equity? We'll start with Councillor Ramsay. Because you were smiling at me.
Man, competing pressures. That is, I think, the toughest thing we have to deal with every day. When I first got elected, 2018, 2019, such a breeze. I miss those days. We didn't have an encampment. We didn't have a pandemic. It was great. I got to go to lots of events and have lots of fun. And then chaos ensued, and crisis after crisis. I don't know how to live without crisis now. It just feels like that's just part of daily life, and that's really sad to me. We've been managing a homeless encampment in Prince George, one that has national precedent-setting legal consequences. We've finally, after 5 years, received a court, the courts have ruled that we're allowed to take down the encampment. So the relief I felt when I got that email in the Save-On parking lot, I started bawling, sobbing, crying, looking at my phone, and I'm pretty sure residents are like, okay, something's happened, don't go approach her right now. the competing pressures are really challenging. I don't think they're going away. I think they're just only going to ramp up and become even more challenging. The challenges with the federal budget, hearing that, the budget's going to be decreasing 7.5%, 15% up until 2027, 28. That means that programs and services are getting cut. Things like grant funding, maybe, like, we don't know the outcomes of that. It's such unstable times. I don't know that I have a good answer for you for this one. I just think that we have to all be in it together, because as soon as someone feels like they're an island, I think things get really overwhelming. So if we can make sure we're just all on the boat together, I think that just makes it, and knowing that we're not alone, sharing our challenges, have a lunch and learn and talk it through. Sometimes I think that is really helpful. And then in terms of empathy, I don't know, does anyone know what the Edelman Trust Barometer is? Nobody? I know Jan knows what it is. I would really encourage you to all search the Edelman Trust Barometer. And it is, Edelman is a public relations firm in Toronto, and every year they measure trust between government, between business, between the media, and the public. They've been doing this for 27 years now. They do it across various different countries, but you can see the trends in trust between the public and government and media and business, and it's not good. And the CEO, Richard Edelman, this year, when they released the barometer, he had this quote, and he said, "We were in an era of fear, an era of polarization, and now we are in an era of grievance. And in order to quell that grievance, the future has to look economically bright." And so how do we maintain empathy in an era of grievance? Everybody's got a gripe about something right now. When we have this economic dark cloud looming over us, it's going to be a while, friends, before we get out of this. And so how can we, in our roles as council and staff, administration, make sure that we're trying to bring some economic hope into our communities? I'm telling you, that is the one way that we are going to maintain empathy. Because if we can't do that, and if our residents lose empathy, everything becomes a battle. So that's the one piece I think I would leave you with, is like, let's continue to make sure that we're building hope into our reporting, into our communication, because it's just gonna be a battlefield if we don't.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's, what's an important message about what you said is that your elected officials are struggling with those pressures. And empathy starts within the organization. It doesn't move out, it starts internally. And anytime we catch ourselves moving into a place of us and them, like staff and council, or staff and the elected officials, that's the kind of language. Catch yourself and stop yourself right away, right? And it has to be a we, because I don't want to overuse the phrase "we're all in it together," but it's really important to recognize that our well-being is tied up with one another, and in our communities, in our local governments, and you're absolutely right. Local government needs to demonstrate the kind of leadership that is required to make some tough decisions, and that takes courage and bravery and fearless advice. So thank you so much for saying that. Mayor Price, do you?
Yeah, I think certainly for elected officials, competing interests are probably one of the most challenging parts of their role right now. Everybody wants a piece of something that's theirs. You look at the housing crisis. We have a housing crisis. Everybody agrees local government, which we shouldn't be involved in, but you got to be involved and you got to do something. You start, zoning amendments and things like this. Then you get an uproar because they don't want it in their backyard. See, so it's all about, I'm seeing more and more, it's all about me attitude in society in general. So there's competing interests right there. Pardon me. Certainly, as with Prince George, Cranbrook's a regional center, we're a regional health center, so we have the majority of the homeless. 60% of our homeless are from Cranbrook. 40% are from the regional area immediately around Cranbrook, and the rest are from out of province, etc. That seems to be the priority right now of all the complaints that you see on social media, and social media is horrible. I mean, it's so toxic, and that's what drives a lot of this stuff today. And that seems to be a focus. But certainly an elected official, yeah, that's a priority, but that is not the priority. We've got so much business to take care of. So I think moving forward, you know, certainly as far as pressure is what you make it. So I think, you know, what we try to do is we get the facts. We deal with the facts, then we try and find a solution. We offer a solution, we pose a solution, and let's be honest, we have limited funding, we have limited resources. If that's the best we can do, that's the best we can do. And, you know, I think with that, as far as the pressure goes, staff are in the front lines of all this. Staff has to be supported. They have to know that you appreciate them, and they have to know they're doing a good job. Staff, I truly believe, if you are working for local government, you're a public servant, and I think staff have to understand what a public servant is, and that helps them go a long way with their mentally how they deal with stuff, and when they're confronted by these issues. I believe that if staff are doing their job, and they do. Let's be honest. In local government, we're so understaffed and under-resourced. They're really warriors out there. I believe that when they're doing their job, they should be going home every day feeling really good about themselves, that they made a difference in the community, for the corporation, and for the people in our community. And make no mistake, I am dead focused on that. That's a belief that, you know, everywhere I've managed, that's been a message to our staff. You're professional, you do it in a professional way, go home and walk out that door knowing you've made a difference in somebody's life today, and you certainly made a difference in me. So I think that part helps, and that does take the pressure. Pressure is what pressure is, and I mean, I think everybody reacts differently to pressure. I think if you got a problem, deal with the facts, find a solution, do the best you can do, and go home feeling good about yourself.
Nice. Thank you. Mayor Fraser.
Yeah, just to add a little bit on that, everybody, some people's go-to these days is to push, I call it pushing the nuclear button. So it's, you know, we don't like what's going on, we're gonna push the nuclear button. It's blow up on social media, it's do all these really big things. It's, for staff, I think extremely frustrating, time-consuming, and emotional. Like, it's stressful. So I think it's important that staff understand you're not going to be able to fix everything, and you can't fix everything, and you just need to do the best you can do and move on. And it's okay to say no, or it's okay to tell council no, or the community no, or here's our rationale for why we're doing this, because the expectation level is higher than it has ever been, I think, ever, in my opinion. And I've seen that, you know, through the 17 years, what people were okay with back then to what they're okay with now. It has just, it's tenfold. So cut yourself some slack, and it's not your job to fix everything for everybody.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm hoping that some of the conversations that you've had in the room have reminded you that actually everybody's kind of in the same boat. You're not alone in your experience. So, all right. So I have one final question and wrap up before we move to questions. And this is your opportunity to ask questions of the elected officials, but there's a couple, really valuable takeaways from what you folks had to say in that, be a learning organization, provide fearless advice, be brave. Don't protect your community or your elected officials from the truth. Go slow to go fast. Focus on the intangibles, building trust, building relational currency, building the story, the narrative. And I wanted to add this little bit that kind of focused on what Mayor Price had to say. And I was speaking at a corporate officers function not that long ago, and I said, walk into every room like everyone loves you. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do. Walk into the your council meetings, your board meetings like everybody loves you and they can't wait to hear what you have to say. And it'll change your energy. Like change your own energy when you walk into the room. Instead of being afraid, walk in, they can't wait to hear what I have to say. Just try it. Just play with it and then get back to me. If it's a disaster, I'm sorry. But I kind of think that it might work. All right, so closing reflections. What advice would you offer to staff who want to engage council and boards more effectively in the asset management conversation? And Mayor Fraser, I'll start with you.
I'm just going to tell a story here. We, obviously, once again, a plug for Doug Allen. We had 17 water districts in the township. I think it's the most anywhere in the province. 10 of those water districts have now dissolved to the township, 100% because of a $10,000 asset management grant that was given to show those people what those assets were worth and what it would cost 105 of you to replace multi-millions of dollars worth of assets down the road. So to me, things like that it's like that's what asset management does. $10,000, it was a small grant, such a simple thing, or you'd think such a simple thing, that made such a huge difference. The province had tried to get those water districts to dissolve. Multiple staff and councils previously had tried to get the water districts to dissolve, but it took that little bit of extra work and engineering and planning to show how you could make it happen. And I think that's asset management in a nutshell, that if you have that buy-in, it's, we all need to buy in. Everybody buys in, and once your community buys in, it makes it simple for the community, way more simple for staff, and easy for the elected officials to do our job. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsay.
So my version is greet everyone like you know them. I have aphantasia, so I'm really bad with, I can't visualize really well images, and so if I've met someone before, I don't necessarily always remember that. So say hello to everyone like you know them, and treat them like you do, and it always works out really well for me. In terms of just maybe some closing considerations, I think when we think about asset management, a lot of it is factual. We're talking about risk matrices. We're talking about facts and statistics. But I think it's also about people, and sometimes we have to make room for feelings. And so when we think about just the culture that we're in with regards to polarization. Things can get really polarizing. I'm a big fan of pluralism because to me it seems like the opposite of polarization, and so making space for people to express negative viewpoints or contrary opinions, I think is really important. Even if I don't agree, even if they're not going to perhaps sway me enough to change the outcome, I think if people don't have the opportunity to share feelings or frustrations, then they push the nuclear button over there. And so sometimes you just need to make space for that. We've had town halls, we've had pop-up shops, City Hall at the mall, things like that. We've done a lot of work in engagement. I don't know if anyone's seen our social media, but our comments are on. I know some local governments actually turn comments off, and that to me blows my mind. You know, we post one thing, like a meme about, it's got Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, and the caption is how we look at city infrastructure. And then there's 300 comments, some of them complaints, some of them bouquets. But, and our staff lean into it. They answer the questions, they deal with the frustrations. And I think at the end of the day, it creates much better buy-in. We've answered all the questions, we've worked through the feelings and the frustrations, and even if we don't feel good about the outcome, at least we know it was explored. And I think that that's really what our residents want. They want to at least know they were heard, and they feel included in the outcome. It might not be something that they support, but they at least understand. And I think that that's a really important piece to not forget. So.
Excellent, thank you. Mayor Price.
Yeah, I think certainly staff are promoting asset management, facts, information, accurate facts, information. Elected officials need facts, and they need all the information. And something I'm learning is data. My God, data. We're in an age of data like I've never seen. The last couple of years, at UBCM, you go down to Victoria and you deal with a minister on these different issues, whether it's policing issues, you're looking for resources, or healthcare, these types of things. First thing they start asking is about data. If you don't have data to support your request, you're not going to get it. And that seems to be the way in everything nowadays, is data matters. So sort of data is king. And I think secondly, as far as staff, certainly in Cranbrook, our engineering staff are driving our asset management program. I think as long as staff understand, they are the subject matter experts. Absolutely. There's not one person, when they come to council, he's even close to being on the same page as them on knowledge and ability. And I saw it over the years where, even when I was a department head, depending on some of the councils, some councils are pretty easy to get along with them, some are quite aggressive, and different members are. You might just have to put your game face on from time to time, come in realizing I am the expert. Come into that room knowing you are the expert, give them what they need, because you own that floor when you're giving that information to. And I think it was some that struggled in the past, to deal with these councils and were comfortable speaking and didn't feel they're being respected or being challenged. Your presence makes a big difference in how you present yourself.
Excellent, thank you. You too could have asset management champions at the council and board table. And I'm gonna promote the free courses that are available. Take these home. Tell your elected officials about it. You want to up your game. You want to make decisions that are defensible. Get yourself educated. So, thank you so much for that, all of you. Now we're going to turn it over to you. Like I said, this is your opportunity to ask the questions that you've been dying to ask. So I think that there's going to be some running around with the mic. Mike is going to run around with the mic, and we've got, okay.
Thanks. The intergenerational equity seems to be a piece or a theme that runs along things, and I've got the assumption that may not be correct, but that engaging youth more in that would help with that support. So do you have any thoughts on how to mentor more young people into politics, or how to continue to engage more young people into politics?
Excellent. Who'd Who'd like to start? What?
Certainly, I think, mentoring, if you're going to have a successful organization, mentoring's a critical stage. Certainly, my time in the fire service, 13 years as a fire chief, you see it within. What you do is you promote and you delegate, and you give direction as the chief. Every step they take leads to a mentorship role. When you leave or when it's their time to move again, they should be moving. They shouldn't be moving, in my opinion, to do a white shirt unless they've had a couple of years being mentored. And it's critical. And mentorship is giving them full authority to do it, what you've been doing. Give them that control so that, and encourage them that they can take that next step and be in control.
All right. Councillor Ramsey.
How do we get more young people in politics? I think this is a tough one because, for me, when I first started in elected office, my employer was not accommodating. I had to take, in my first term, I took 104 unpaid days off work just to go to council meetings. That doesn't include conferences, that it doesn't include, area associations, UBCM, FCM, that I use my vacation for. And so, if you want young people to put their hand up, I think there's a couple of different pieces. The first is that we really need to inform employers in our community that this is really important civic work, and that they can have employees who are dedicated to them as employers while also supporting them to do important community work. 104 unpaid days off work. That's a huge. It was about $27,000 of lost income just to go to council meetings. And so when you're getting paid, like $18 an hour to go to a council meeting, it's not really equitable. And so I think if you want young people to even consider it, you really have to review your council procedure bylaw. You have to make sure that the policies are equitable, that the meeting times are going to work. There's so many times where a special council meeting is called and I have to decide between whether or not I'm going to go to work that day or whether I'm going to go to the council meeting. And it took a lot of relationship building with my employer to really help them see the benefit. But I think if there was more education out there, I have a colleague on council, when she got elected, she actually lost her job. Her employer terminated her. And so that's the reality of elected life, is that, I am a unicorn in the communications world because financial communications is really niche. I couldn't move to another organization. No one would hire me. When my first term, it was horrible. I was applying for jobs, and 6 different employers said, "I can't hire you. You're elected." I said, "Well, actually, you can hire me. You just choose not to." I ended up working it out with my employer and doing a lot of work to educate them. And now I'm in a really great position, but that's not the position of a lot of young people. They're not going to get that same opportunity. Employers are really going to make them feel pressured not to go to meetings. They're going to pressure them to take unpaid time off. It's going to affect your pensionable earnings. There's just so much things. So I think that's one piece. The other piece is mentorship programs, absolutely important. Encouraging young people to put their names forward for committees. I think that's a huge place to start. That's how I started. I chaired a city committee, and I didn't want to chair a city committee, but I was appointed to the committee, and I walked in the room, and they said, "You're the youngest person you're chairing." And I'm really grateful for having that experience. It was really positive. So encourage young people to apply for committees, to put their names forward for those short-term engagements to get their foot in the door so that they can start to understand more about what local government is about. And you know, I ended up chairing a council remuneration committee, which is like, holy moly, what is this? This is like a very quick introduction to local government. And you know, after I chaired the committee, I had people after me saying, you should run. And I thought, okay, why not me? So I think we have to make sure that young people can see themselves in politics. Sometimes that is really difficult, but that why not me question, I think, should be just explored a little bit more in our communities.
Thank you. Mayor Fraser, do you have anything you want to add?
So just for fun, last night I was watching the federal legislature meetings, full disclosure, and watched a bunch of politicians act like 5-year-olds. I think it's important for young people, if we get into the schools, have a course or something that they can take, even at the senior high level, that talks about local government, what local government is, that it's not what you see on TV, unless you have, they're watching the local, your local politicians on a YouTube or something. But engaging with them there, and because really it's about engaging them. It's about letting them know that, hey, there's a lot of different parts to local government, and it's not, you don't just sit there. And when you're on the other side, I think when someone sits in the gallery or are watching local government, it's boring. It's, there's nothing exciting here. But when you're sitting on the other side of the table and there's all multi-millions of dollars worth of decisions being made and all these things happening in your community, and you actually get to be a part of making those things happen or instilling change in your community, those are exciting things. And I think young people will find, like, it's different. It's something different all the time. Focus on that, because most jobs are, straight line. It's the same every day. And local government is not. Local government is exciting. Like, there's a lot, sorry, geek. But local government is exciting. Like, and when we have young people that come either through SILGA, they come with us to SILGA or they come with us to UBCM, they love it. Like, they love the experience. The comments they make are, we had no idea that there was so much to local government and all the different things that you do. So I really think if there were courses at the maybe even junior to senior high level, I think that would go a long way for kids to realize what local government is all about, because otherwise it's, cell phones and Instagram and screen time, right? So we have to show them. I will, as a caveat, say that in the township we have someone who is actually called the Godfather, so we also make people, make our young people apply for local government. You get coerced.
That's awesome. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask your elected official, how about we, go talk to the social studies teacher? Can we do a presentation on what the role of local government is in our lives? And bring your elected official and do a little presentation and make it fun and interesting. Here's all the services. You know that skateboard park that you love? Well, that's what local government does. The pool and all those things, that's what local government does. So don't be afraid to grab your elected official and really get into the education system, because I don't think civics, at the local level, is on the curriculum. So you can make it happen. The other thing I think that these folks really had to say, and that is, when you see somebody who's a young person who's got leadership competencies, ask them to get involved. I bet every one of you are elected officials because somebody saw something in you and said, you'd be great on council. Right? So
Every single grad exit interview that we do, because councils in our area go to the grad exit interviews, or capstone it's called.
Yes.
I preach local government, and I give them as much information. Here, look at all the things you can do. Look at all the jobs you can do, even from the staff end. But look at all the things that local government has to offer for you, and that's a great way as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Ah, yes, back there. Mike's running with the mic. Oh.
Sorry. Beat you to it. This is an Asset Management BC conference. We love talking about asset management all day, every day. But when you go about your other lives as elected officials, and you're talking with elected officials in other communities, how much is asset management a topic when you're speaking with those other groups? Because as somebody who is a part of training new elected officials, it would be really nice if there was also, some of that information coming from other elected officials who are already in those positions.
Yes. All right. Who wants to tackle that first?
I mean, I would just say people are assets too, and I think we talk about people often. What was your experience? I learned early. Sometimes it's really a bad idea to ask your own colleagues for advice around your own council table, because the advice that they give you is not always in your best interest. That was a dumb lesson I learned early on, but I have found mentors outside of my Prince George Council, Mayor Story of Fraser Lake, and several others. And sometimes it's nice just to be able to call them and be like, hey, here's this issue, what do you think? Or talking with someone in a bigger city center, Councillor Pete Fry in Vancouver, hey, have you experienced this before? And I think the experiences of my colleagues who have been there longer, who aren't at my own council, I find value in hearing those experiences. So one of the things I would say is, as going through the training, there's a lot of case studies in there, but they're all like, here's the positive, happy outcome. Tell me about the time that it sucked. Tell me about the time it was awful. How did you deal with? I want to hear that story too. So that's equally important.
A crunchy story. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to say?
Yeah, I think it's easier. I actually think would be quite a bit easier with newly elected officials because they don't know what they don't know. Whereas when you're dealing with longtime politicians, some of them, they have an ingrained idea of how things run in the organization. And I think it's a mind shift. You have to take your newly electeds, talk to them about asset management, explain why it's important, and you also have to get buy-in from the longtime politicians. So in a community where you have a champion, that's easy to do because to me it flows down, well, in our community anyway, it flows down from the mayor. So I am very vocal with all of council. I talk to all of council about everything. Doug and I will have good conversations, and then I talk to council about it, and then there's buy-in in our community. But when you switch to the community next door, and they think we're getting into the weeds because I was telling someone this morning, I don't care if it's a 250 millimeter pipe or a 500 millimeter pipe. I just want to know the cost difference between the two and what's the long-term implication on the community of that. So it's really not getting into the weeds, and I think that's the biggest thing, that probably one of the biggest challenges staff will have is trying to get your longtime politicians to buy in, if you want to call it that. But just making that easy, like really showing that, and have any of them reach out. Like I can give you my card. I have no problem. Things that the province couldn't accomplish that we were able to accomplish in our community because of asset management. I'll talk asset management all day long and how great it is and how it can change a community.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, yes. Yes, we've got one at the back there.
It's always like a long walk for me. I should have camped out back.
Great, thanks for the dialogue thus far. My question is just around what do you feel you'd like to learn more within the asset management space that would allow you to better support the public?
Everybody heard that question?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
I think one of the things my colleagues really ask for is more information in the capital planning documentation we get. And, we get infrastructure report cards so I can see, this is the infrastructure reinvestment funding gap for roads and in the asset categories. But when we're looking at the capital plan, it's not always in there. And that's very intentional because you don't want to give so much information that you're, impacting procurement, but council also wants more information in decision making. So how do we, find that balance? And that's the piece that we're constantly struggling with at my council is how do we have that, get that information while also maintaining, making sure we're not giving away the farm. And that's a hard thing. I think really information sessions are really critical. Doing more information sessions, taking your council through the capital plan line by line, talking about the projects and giving a little bit more information in that information session that's not an open meeting. Those things are allowed to happen. My CAO is a lawyer, so he follows everything by the book, but we really utilize those information sessions to have those conversations, and there's so much value in it, so I would highly recommend, making that a practice at your own communities.
Do you want to repeat? Can you repeat the question? Oops. Oh, you don't have a microphone. Okay.
The question was, what would elected leaders like to learn more about with asset management that would help them in their role?
I think certainly for new elected officials, it's important that the CAO buys in. That's extremely important. He has to have it as a good understanding as the staff that are in charge of the program, and then getting that information to council. Certainly, what we've done in the last couple of years, which I see makes a significant difference, is committee of the whole meetings. You will have a committee of the whole meeting specifically on asset management. Then you go line by line, and not just one. You do that, and then you follow up later in the year with a second committee of the whole meetings, and it's just dedicated to that one topic. That gives you time to do a little bit of homework before you go in, and you're going to have a much better understanding. And plus, your relationship with your staff really improves. They've got the floor, and they're leading you through it. So I think a lot of councillors will gain a lot more respect, for the staff through that type of process.
Yeah, one of the things, if I might add as well, is talking about educating your elected officials on the broad range of services that are provided in the organization and the service levels, because I don't think that that's well understood often in local governments. Here's all the services that we provide, and here's the level of service. And where elected officials get to move the dial is, do we want to increase the level of service, decrease the level of service, maintain the level of service, eliminate the service, add a service, right? So using that service level language to educate your elected officials. Anybody else want to add anything else?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say the visuals are really important once again. And I know that was mentioned earlier, but the visuals for the elected officials that then translate to your electorate. Because, if you show the pipes that here's where it corroded through and this is what happened and people can see that, you get way bigger buy-in. And it's an easy visual because I'll find the reality is lots of people don't read the financial reports. The average resident is not going out there looking into the details of things. You might have some that go through and do that, and they'll be the ones that come and ask the questions, but you have to keep it simple, you have to keep it really visual, and build a little bit of asset management stuff into everything you do. on the homepage of your website, on your Facebook, on your Instagram, on your different pages. Just have little blurbs that talk about, hey, here's what this is, and this is why we do asset management. Because the more you say asset management, the more people will understand. It'll become a daily word. And I think that that's critical to people then going, oh, well, that's the same, like, relate it. Relate it to your house, to the assets for the community. That's a really, really easy way to go, oh yeah, I do have to look after this. If I don't clean my gutters are gonna fail and my roof's gonna leak and, you know, I'm gonna have to do all this water damage repair. It makes it really relatable for people. And I think that's critical both for elected officials and then to the public, that they feel it's relatable, because then they'll go, oh yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you try to expand that knowledge of asset management beyond the corporate realm, you know, and get it into the public. I think most of the public know the term asset management, but they really don't understand asset management. And quite frankly, you know, I think that that's true with some of the councillors too. You know, they think they do understand. It's like anything else. You can go into the departments and you know what they do, but you don't know what it takes to get it done. So I think that's really important. And I think a second part too is, you know, when we're dealing with asset management, it's really easy for council to get over-focused. And I don't mean this as a knock, but because once they see it for what it is, they're going, oh my God, what are we going to do? It's overwhelming, and you know, so it is long-term planning. So I think what's really important that the elected officials have to remember is fair funding. There's other departments out there, there's other needs within the community, and it's really easy because, you know, we're getting more and more to critical spending right now. You know, the nice to do, I don't think is on any municipality or local government's list today. It is critical expenditures only now. So the fair funding, how do you make sure you're looking after the other departments, the other community needs? Because if you just shift one way, you're going to have some people that are really, you know, unsettled and don't think they're being represented fairly.
To the point about the list, we still keep track of all of the nice to haves. It's just on the unfunded capital list, so we don't want to lose track of those things. They're important. And when people see it on the unfunded, at least they know that it's been bookmarked, it's been earmarked, so that, you know, if in the future there's the funding, there's a grant, there's something, some donor wants to come and publicly fund a piece of infrastructure, it's there.
All right, well, thank you. Give these folks a hand I hope that you've gleaned some wisdom from them. Thank you so much. Thanks for being champions, and thank you for showing up here at the Asset Management Conference. Bring your friends.